It was a crisp Monday morning in Washington, D.C., and the Capitol was already buzzing with anticipation. The media had gotten wind of a high-stakes Senate Intelligence Committee hearing where Vice President JD Vance was set to testify. The topic, national security reforms under the Trump administration's second term. But what no one saw coming was the drama that would unfold between Vance and one of his loudest critics, Senator Adam Schiff. Vance, known for his unapologetic Midwestern grit and fiery populist rhetoric, had rapidly become one of the most powerful figures in the Republican Party. A Marine veteran and best-selling author turned senator turned vice president, JD Vance had defied every odd. Loved by Trump supporters and feared by establishment Democrats, he was now seen as a potential 2028 presidential frontrunner. But Adam Schiff, the sharp-tongued senator from California and former House Intelligence Committee chair, had never trusted Vance. Schiff considered him a dangerous populist with too much influence over Trump and America's future. The hearing room was packed. Cameras rolled as Vance sat confidently behind the witness table. With his sleeves rolled up and his signature no-nonsense stare, he looked more like someone about to fix an engine than someone testifying in Congress. Meanwhile, Schiff walked in with his trademark smirk, ready to spar. "Vice President Vance," Schiff began, flipping through his notes with visible irritation. "You've advocated for expanding executive power in national security matters. Do you honestly think that's what the founders intended? Or are you just another political jerk trying to impress Donald Trump?" The room gasped. Reporters fumbled for their phones. The word jerk echoed through the chamber like a slap. Vance didn't flinch. He leaned in slowly, narrowed his eyes, and said calmly, "Senator Schiff, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. What you're defending is your ego and CNN airtime." Boom. Even before the sentence was over, conservative social media erupted. Schiff turned red. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Vance replied. "You're still running the same 2019 script, pretending to be the hero in a story where America's forgotten working class is the real protagonist." The room was tense. Trump's allies smiled quietly. Progressives glared. And Schiff, thrown off his rhythm, tried to reframe. "This isn't about the working class, Mr. Vice President. This is about abuse of power." And yet, Vance cut in, "You were silent during FBI overreach, silent during unconstitutional lockdowns, and silent while middle America was crushed. Funny how your concern for power only flares up when someone outside the Beltway uses it." People shifted in their seats. Vance had struck a nerve, and he knew it. Outside the chamber, conservative podcasters were already praising him. "That's how you handle a swamp rat," one influencer tweeted. Vance's poll numbers, already strong, were expected to surge even further. But Schiff wasn't done. His face grew more tense, and the next words he spoke would escalate things beyond what anyone in the room had imagined. Schiff leaned forward, his voice tightening with each syllable. "Mr. Vice President, you might be able to charm the MAGA crowd, but your ideas about executive power are dangerous. You wrap authoritarianism in working-class language, but at the end of the day, you're just another strongman in a suit." The words stung, at least Schiff thought they would. But JD Vance smirked, adjusted his microphone, and paused just long enough to own the moment. "Senator," he said, "if I'm a strongman, it's only because Washington's been run by weak men like you for too long." Gasps again. Schiff blinked rapidly. "I fought for this country," Vance continued, his voice rising. "You spent your life on Capitol Hill, launching investigations that led nowhere, grandstanding on cable news, and selling fear to raise campaign funds." "I was defending democracy," Schiff shot back, clearly flustered. "Were you?" Vance replied sharply. "You smeared innocent people, leaked classified info for clout, and helped turn half this country against the other half. That's not defending democracy. That's poisoning it." There was no denying it now. Schiff had lost control of the moment. The committee chair cleared his throat, trying to settle the room, but no one was listening. All eyes were on the two men, and the media outside the chamber was already cutting clips. Schiff tried again, now visibly irritated. "You're dangerously close to promoting dictatorship, Vice President Vance." That's when Vance leaned in again and, in a moment that would dominate the news cycle for days, said the sentence that sent Schiff into a tailspin. "You call it dictatorship. The American people call it finally being heard." The silence in the room was thunderous. Everyone knew that line would be replayed 1,000 times. And it was. Within minutes, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok exploded with commentary. Conservative pundits hailed it as a historic mic drop. Trump himself, watching from the Oval Office, reportedly laughed and said, "That's my guy." Progressives panicked. MSNBC hosts called it chilling. CNN ran a breaking banner, "Vance defends strongman rule," while Fox News plastered the quote in gold, "finally being heard." Later that day, Schiff rushed to CNN headquarters for an interview. "What happened in that room today was scary," he told Anderson Cooper. "We have a vice president who's openly challenging constitutional balance." But by that evening, a new poll showed JD Vance's approval among Republican voters had jumped 7 points. Independent voters, many of whom were tired of career politicians, found his bluntness refreshing. As for Schiff, his staff was in damage control mode, releasing carefully worded statements, while Democrat leadership remained silent. Meanwhile, Vance walked out of that Senate chamber with the swagger of a man who had just solidified his place not just in the Trump administration, but in American political history. By the next morning, JD Vance's one-liner, "You call it dictatorship. The American people call it finally being heard," had become the most viral quote in politics since Trump's original "Make America Great Again." Newsrooms scrambled to dissect it. Cable networks split screen time between Vance's supporters and panicked liberal commentators. Twitter trended with hashtag finally being heard, while Adam Schiff became a meme, his red-faced reaction edited into everything from rap battles to WWE-style promos. In conservative circles, Vance was a legend. Senator Josh Hawley called him the bulldozer we need. Governor Ron DeSantis, who had returned to Trump's fold, posted a photo with Vance and the caption, "They mock us until we win." Even Trump himself reposted a clip of the hearing on Truth Social with the message, "JD Vance equals patriot. Adam Schiff equals clown. Mega." But on the other side, Democrats were in an all-out panic. The Washington Post editorial board published an emergency op-ed. "The rise of Vance. A threat to American democracy?" CNN's Van Jones said, "This is how authoritarian regimes start. Through applause lines that sound like revolution but smell like dictatorship." Schiff attempted a media blitz, appearing on MSNBC and ABC's The View. He tried to paint Vance as the intellectual muscle of a dangerous Trumpian resurgence. "He's smart, he's strategic, and he's dangerous," Schiff said. "Don't let the Midwestern charm fool you. He's building the infrastructure of autocracy with Trump's blessing." But the public wasn't convinced. In Ohio, Pennsylvania, and even parts of Michigan, Vance's approval among independents was growing. Working-class voters said the same thing again and again to reporters. "At least he talks straight. He's not scared of them DC suits." Schiff finally got what he deserved. Back in Washington, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was pressed for comment. "Vice President Vance," she said crisply, "stood up for the people who've been ignored by Washington elites for decades. If that offends a career politician like Adam Schiff, that's his problem, not ours." The room fell silent. Reporters knew they were witnessing a full-court embrace of Vance's moment by the entire Trump administration. It wasn't just a viral clip. It was a political campaign blueprint in the making. That same day, Vance made an unannounced visit to a manufacturing plant in Youngstown, Ohio. Cameras followed him as he shook hands, took selfies, and gave a quick speech standing on a wooden crate. "They'll call you names. They'll call me worse. But here's what they'll never do. They'll never show up here where it matters. Because they don't care about you. I do. And that's why I won't stop talking, no matter what Adam Schiff or anyone else says." Over the next week, Washington buzzed with one question. Had JD Vance just become the most powerful voice in American politics, second only to Trump himself? Inside the West Wing, President Donald Trump was reportedly thrilled. "That was gold," he told his advisors. "That's how you punch back. Vance gets it." Sources said Trump was even considering sending Vance on a nationwide speaking tour, dubbed unofficially as the America First Town Hall series. Locations were already being locked down in swing states, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. In contrast, Adam Schiff's world was imploding. First came the op-eds. The New York Times published a blistering critique. Adam Schiff miscalculated. He believed JD Vance was a regular Republican. What he faced instead was a disciplined populist with sharper instincts than anyone expected. Then came the criticism from within his own party. Senator Jon Tester privately told donors that Schiff should have known better than to pick a fight with someone who can out-talk him and out-tough him on camera. Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in a lukewarm tweet, said, "Schiff's job isn't to win fights, it's to prevent them. We need focus, not fireworks." Publicly, Schiff was still trying to salvage the moment. He hosted a town hall in Los Angeles, hoping to rally support. Instead, things got worse. A group of hecklers showed up wearing red hats that read "Finally Heard." They interrupted his speech repeatedly, shouting phrases like, "Talk louder, Adam, we can't hear over your lies," and "JD Vance sent you packing." The videos went viral again. Meanwhile, JD Vance didn't slow down. During a speech in Atlanta, he said, "They say I'm dangerous. You know what's dangerous? Being ruled by the same 10 people for 30 years while your towns die and your factories close. That's dangerous." The crowd roared. But it wasn't just speeches and media clips. Vance's team had begun building something bigger, a national coalition of voters disillusioned with both parties. His message resonated not just with Trump loyalists but also with rural Democrats, independents, and Gen Z conservatives tired of political correctness. At a rally in Arizona, Vance dropped another bombshell. "This isn't about me versus Schiff. This is about you versus the system. And let me say this clearly, 2028 starts now." The audience exploded in cheers. Reporters gasped. He had just unofficially launched his presidential campaign. Hours later, Schiff appeared on Rachel Maddow's MSNBC show looking visibly exhausted. "JD Vance is dangerous," he said. "He's charismatic, but he's leading us to authoritarianism. I won't apologize for calling that out." But the tide had turned. Maddow herself, though sympathetic, challenged him. "Senator, didn't you give him the spotlight? Was it smart to provoke someone who thrives in conflict?" Schiff froze. For a man who once led high-profile Trump impeachment hearings, this was unfamiliar territory, being outmaneuvered, outmessaged, and outplayed. In the days that followed Vance's sentence, "You call it dictatorship. The American people call it finally being heard," was printed on T-shirts, bumper stickers, and digital billboards across red states. It was no longer just a soundbite. It was a rallying cry. 3 weeks after the infamous Senate hearing, America felt different. The tone of national politics had shifted, and it wasn't just media buzz, it was felt in diners, barbershops, and union halls. Vice President JD Vance had gone from a name occasionally mentioned in political think pieces to a front-page phenomenon, a cultural force who had captured the country's imagination. And Adam Schiff? He had become the cautionary tale, the establishment figure who dared to take on the rising voice of the heartland and got steamrolled in real time. Things came to a head when the Senate reconvened for another hearing, this time on border security. Schiff walked in, avoiding cameras, and sat quietly in the back row. All eyes weren't on him anymore, they were on the man at the center of the chamber, Vice President JD Vance. This time, Vance wasn't there to testify, he was seated beside President Trump, who made a surprise appearance. The two men, Trump and Vance, sat like a political wrecking ball waiting to be swung. As debate heated up, one senator brought up the previous confrontation. "Mr. Vice President," Senator Mark Warner began cautiously, "some have said your recent statements dangerously blur the line between populism and authoritarianism. Would you like to clarify your position?" Vance smiled, leaned into the mic, and answered, "I'm not interested in titles or labels. I'm interested in results. And if standing up for Americans who've been ignored, insulted, and betrayed by this government makes me dangerous, then so be it." Gasps, murmurs, applause from the gallery. President Trump grinned beside him, whispering something into Vance's ear. The cameras caught it. Experts would later lip-read it as, "They're not ready for you, JD. Not yet." But everyone knew what was coming. That same night, at a campaign-style rally in Des Moines, Iowa, Trump made it official. "Folks, I'm serving my final term. But that doesn't mean the movement ends. Oh no, the America First revolution is just getting started. And you know who's next." The crowd began to chant, "JD, JD, JD." Vance walked onto the stage, shaking Trump's hand. He took the mic and looked straight into the cameras with the confidence of a man who had beaten the system at its own game. "They called me a jerk. They called me worse. But you know what? I don't care what the senators say in D.C. I care what the single mom in Dayton says. I care what the steelworker in Pittsburgh says. I care what the rancher in Texas says. And they're not calling me a jerk. They're calling me hope." Tears welled in the eyes of attendees. Men waved flags. Women clutched their children. Reporters sat stunned. And somewhere in California, Adam Schiff sat alone in his office, watching the moment unfold on television. He stared in silence, Aides didn't know what to say. Vance had taken his insult, flipped it into a movement, and launched the next chapter of his political life. Not with vengeance, but with vision. A sentence. A hearing. A confrontation. That's all it took. What Schiff thought was a blow ended up being the spark. The insult meant to bruise had become a badge of honor, and Vice President JD Vance, once underestimated, had walked through the fire and emerged as the heir to a political empire. In a nation divided and uncertain of its future, one thing was now clear. JD Vance wasn't going anywhere.